Changemaker, spiritual seeker, and speaker Robin Sharma is committed to helping humans pull out all the stops so we can dump fear, embrace life, and stand for something a little bit bigger than ourselves. Sharma is a man of karma who knows firsthand lasting happiness comes from the size of our impact, not the extent of our income or the fancy car we drive. In his newest book, he reveals the contents of the secret letters of the monk who sold his Ferrari. It is my pleasure to welcome head monk of leadership, Robin Sharma, back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
I have not heard an introduction like that in a long time. The karma of Sharma.
Yes,
Thank you, Fanny.
You can use it. That'll be 5 cents.
That is a superb line. Thank you.
Well, you weren't always the Sharma karma. You were a lawyer, have a few degrees. And when did you decide that you weren't all that happy?
Well, I was a lot like Jonathan Landry, the star of The Secret Letters. I was stuck. I'd bought into a definition of success sold to me by society. So society says if you make a lot of money, if you live in a nice house, you drive the right car, you wear the right watch, you're going to wake up one day and you're actually going to be happy. So I did all of those things. I became a very successful lawyer. But the only problem, Fanny, is I'd wake up in the morning, walk into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and I didn't like the person that I was. And what I did was that disruption or that inner suffering or dissatisfaction set me out on a journey. And I started to try to rethink the way I was living and find a better way to live. And I wrote that first Monk Who Sold His Ferrari book, and it led me on the most interesting of adventures.
And you self-published that, didn't you?
Self-published in a Kinko's copy shop. About
Great.
300. My mom was my
Not
editor.
a big house.
No, look, I started off with a few hundred books sitting in my kitchen and nothing more than a dream. And people ridiculed me. They say, you're a lawyer, you have this book and you want to teach people about living a better life and leadership and expressing your creative gifts. What do you know? But what I've since learned is the more people ridicule you, the more you know you probably have a really good dream.
You also write a pretty good fable.
Thank you.
Your last one, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, was a stunner. Now this one, The Secret Letters, what prompted it?
Well, this is the real sequel to The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And it's taken me about 15 years to get to a place where I wanted to write it. We live in a world of what I call the age of dramatic distraction. If you look at the data, on an average day, the average person is spending 2.1 hours in distraction. Fanny, we are interrupted every 11 minutes by a piece of technology or by a distraction. It takes 25 minutes to refocus your mind on what you're doing. What I'm suggesting is there are a lot of people who are really busy being busy. And so I wrote The Secret Letters of the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari to remind people what's most important. Because too many people are giving their best hours to things that at the end of their lives will not amount to anything.
It's so true, and I know you're about legacy.
Yeah, very much so.
Leaving a good one, so someone will cry when you die.
Well, this comes from
or
my
maybe
dad.
a lot of people will cry when you die.
I think at the end of the day, only two things are going to matter. When we're at the last hour of our last day, number one, as compared to our human potential, how much of it did we have the courage to present to the world? And number two, what difference did we make? And that sort of comes from a philosophy my dad shared with me when I was growing up that is really central to every book I write and every speech I give, which is, he said, Robin, when you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries while you rejoice. And what I'm really getting at is, ultimately, life is pretty short. And before we know it, every one of us is going to be dust. And so at the end, it's not the shiny toys that matter. It's not the title on the business card. It's not your station in society. It's
not your net worth.
It's not your net worth.
Darn.
It's what did we stand for? Who did we become? Did we influence children? Did we lead by example? Did we have an impact in the world? And in many ways, that's what The Secret Letters is all about. It's about how do you do great work that matters? How do you overcome your fears? How do you take risks? How do you find happiness? But ultimately, how do you live a life that at the end of your life, you're proud of it?
And you also suggest we should live an authentic life. And I know it's a
Sure.
big buzzword in leadership circles these days. So authentic, how do you define it?
Well, it is a big buzzword. I just spoke for Starbucks recently, and that's a company that really is focusing on their authenticity. How do I define it? I'm going to get back to our old friend Shakespeare. He said, "To thine own self be true." And I just wish we could spend a day talking about it, because how many people are living their neighbors' lives, or they're living their mother's lives, or they're living society's lives, but they're betraying themselves in the process. And if you want happiness, It's all about doing your dreams, living your values, speaking with your voice, and it doesn't matter if people laugh at you or think you're strange. I love Steve Jobs, right? You know, Apple, here's to the crazy ones. Live your life, do your dreams, live your life on your own terms, and that's one of the greatest secrets of happiness.
And he did in life, I assume, I didn't know him, but I assume he did. He also did when he was dying, because the doctor, the oncologist, according to the press, said to him, you can have an operation. We may be able to save your life. He said, doing it my way.
Absolutely.
Doing it the alternative way. Want to do it that way. My life, my death.
Well, Fanny, if I may say, by the way, I just want to say you're one of the best interviewers and I have to say that because I sort of live by Robert Louis Stevenson's words, which says, if you have a chance to say something to celebrate another human being, don't miss that opportunity.
Really?
And I just want to say,
you want to say that again?
You're an awesome interviewer. but
Could you repeat that?
I do a lot of interviews, and I just want to celebrate you for your craft, because I really love to see someone who sees their work as a craft. I mean, you know, the character in Barcelona in The Secret Letters, he's a taxi driver, but he works like Picasso painted. And, you know, I think it's so important to do your work not to see it as a job, but to see it as a craft, because again, work is a great source of fulfillment. But back to Steve Jobs, you're right. I mean, I think one of the things about Steve Jobs is what made Apple is he had a vision early on when him and Woz were in the garage. And you look at other companies and they allowed obstructions to get in the way of their vision. But Apple had a vision, and no matter what the obstruction was, whether it was people saying you can't build a Mac without a fan, or you can't do the iPod, or he said, no, this is my vision and it shall be done. And in the face of any obstacle, he stayed true to his vision, and I think that is so powerful.
Well, it sounds like an oxymoron, but there is such a thing as blind vision.
Yes.
You're going there, and it's really a dumb thing to do. However, I'm suggesting, and you may agree or not, that that's a good thing. That's something that we fail. We fail up, they call it, I guess, but we fail. As people come into our lives that test us.
Yes. Yeah, I think failure is the highway to success, and I know that sounds like a platitude, but society or people teach us, right? They say, oh, if you fail and feel uncomfortable, you've done something wrong. And what I try to do in all of my books and my presentations and my tweets is you cannot get to the mountaintop without taking a few missteps. And so a business that wants to win, you have to outfail your competition. And as human beings, you know, failure is not a bad thing. You know, ask yourself, what's the opportunity from the failure, and get in the game, because when you get to the last hour of your last day, it will not be the failures you regret, it'll be all the risks you didn't take.
And what are the keys to resilience? What do you do? How do you raise a resilient child?
Well, the starting point is understanding that success and leadership is not about everything going perfectly. I mean, look at the world right now. We've got energy issues, we've got economic issues, the Eurozone crisis, there's the sovereign debt issues, there's possibly peak oil, there's
contemporary war like we've never seen it before. 80% of the people killed in war today are civilians.
Okay.
Civilians.
Okay, and then you add to that the population issue. We're on a spherical planet with limited resources, and by 2050 we'll have 9.5 billion people. So there's going to be a lot of disruption. I suggest the next 20 years will be nothing like the past 20 years. But how do you stay resilient? You ask yourself, what do I need to do to protect myself against the disruption? Number two, how can I leverage disruption to build an even better life, an even better career? And number three, one of my favorite questions, what's the opportunity here? No matter when you get knocked down, ask yourself, how can I use this to turn it around to make myself even smarter, even better, to create more value for more people and to build an even better life?
And often to do that, you have to dump those crazy thoughts in your head.
Well,
Self-thoughts,
sure.
The monkey.
I think it all starts from within. And in The Secret Letters of the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that's really the starting point that I'm sharing with people, which is, you know what? Build a great outer life, but the doorway to success begins inward. And ultimately, you can never build a bigger life than the quality of your thinking. I mean, what holds us back is our thinking. What holds us back is our inner self-sabotage. What holds us back is not the environment or the economy. It's our mindset. I mean, there are entrepreneurs out in the world right now going, this is the best time to be in business. We are so wired. There are so many opportunities. There's money that I can get from investors. I'm going to go out and change the world, like Facebook and Twitter and Zappos and Starbucks. And then there are a lot of entrepreneurs or business people or human beings who are frightened. And I guess I'll suggest it to this way, which is victims are afraid of change. Leaders are inspired by change, and this is a great time to be alive.
And many of us are afraid to work without a net, if you know what I mean. Like
Sure,
if you're crossing Niagara Falls on that wire,
Sure.
I'd like a net.
And you talk about wires. Do you remember Papa Wallenda, the great high wire
Yes.
walker?
He wants to do it again, you know.
Well,
He's dead. But is it his son?
I think it's his son.
Yeah.
But he once said, life is lived out on the wire, the rest is just waiting. And I honestly believe, Fanny, we are most alive when we're out on the wire, when we're out on the limb, when our heart is beating and we're chasing a dream and we're taking risks and we're doing the things that frighten us. That's when we're most alive, not sitting in a subdivision coasting through life.
True. When we come back, let's talk about the fable, because it's such a good fable, and I love the premise.
Thank you.
Because Julian Mantle is not so well. He's having a little health issue, so he sends his nephew on a wild goose chase, a really good wild goose chase, in search of talisman and in search of wisdom and all of that. Welcome back with Robin Sharma.